welcome. I just wanted to put a little video up about what you guys can expect from lawyering skills over the next couple of semesters. I want you to have this roadmap because everything we're doing is sort of building to a big assignment at the end of the first semester and another one at the end of the second semester. And I want you to know that because that kind of helps you understand what the overarching goal of what each individual thing is. And so at the end of the first semester, you're going to write, this is Simba, one of many, you're going to write what we call a predictive brief or memo. Now you're going to hear those words quite a bit. Brief and memo can mean the same thing. A lot of people don't really differentiate between a brief and a memo, or they call a memo a brief. And so when we use the word brief, we can mean one of two things. We can mean a case brief. And a case brief, sometimes you'll hear that called an IRAC brief. A case brief is a summary of a case. A case is something that has been decided by a judge. So an opinion, let's take a very famous Supreme Court case. Let's take Brown versus Board of Education. That's a Supreme Court case. If I said to you brief that case, that means give me a very specific style of a summary of that case. It's a case from the civil rights era, so it's not new, and I could brief it today if I wanted to. It's a summary. And those summaries are used for a lot of things. One of those things that summary, that brief is used for is to make an oral argument. If I'm in front of a court, even a trial court, I've argued in front of trial courts, we'll talk about that in a minute. If I'm orally arguing for my client in a court, I might have a stack of cases that I think apply or that I think the court might ask me about. And those one-page briefs let me really quickly go through all of my authority and have one page at a time where I know the structure of what the brief looks like, so I can really quickly find what I'm looking for when I'm on my feet in the hot seat in front of the Court of Appeals or trial court or what have you. So that's brief number one. Another type of brief might also be called a memo. This kind of brief, and when you're asked to write something, make sure you clarify what it is. But a brief might also be a large argument to a court or to another attorney in your firm. When I say a predictive brief or memo, this means I might say to you, let's be topical. My son, you can see his target practice right here with his Nerf guns. He is just turning 7 and he's a first grader here in southern Indiana. His school has a mask mandate. If I were to ask you, is that constitutional? You wouldn't write an IRAC brief, a summary brief. You would brief the issue. So you can brief a case and you can also brief an issue. And so that issue, you might have multiple cases, constitutional and otherwise, Supreme Court in Indiana. You can have a variety of those, and you would put them all together and synthesize them into the answer. And so if I had a client come to me and say, I want to fight this mask mandate for my school, I would find all of the cases that I could find on that particular topic, and I would put them together to predict what a court would do. For instance, just last week, the Supreme Court upheld Indiana University's vaccine mandate. And so that college had a mandate that said you can't work or go to school here without getting vaccinated against COVID-19. I might put that case against with some other vaccine cases and some other free speech, freedom of expression, dress code kind of cases from public schools to put together an answer. Knowing that most of those cases are going to side with the school district, just because I know that, you'll find that out through your research. I'm going to put those all together and write what's called a predictive brief. And I can, if I'm a junior attorney writing like an internal memo to a senior attorney, or if I'm writing it to a court, I'm going to predict what the answer is. Not a court, I'm sorry. The predictive answer predicts what the law is, or predicts what's going to happen with that particular case. So I've got a client coming in and says, I want to fight this mask mandate. I look at all these cases, I put them all together. Dress code cases, because there's not a lot of mask cases, public health cases, vaccine cases, and my prediction from as a junior attorney to a senior attorney is that the law is not on our side. That's what the prediction is. So, Step 2, so that's what the end of fall semester is going to be, a predictive brief. Here's your question, here's your problem, find the case law that applies. That's the research portion, because learning skills is not just writing, it's research and it's writing, and your textbooks are a little bit of both. And we're going to talk about professionalism, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of different stuff. This course is a nice building block for everything else, but the two main components are legal research and legal writing. In that first semester brief, that predictive brief, I'm a junior attorney writing to a senior attorney. Sorry, the law is not on our side. And so that attorney might take those cases and write a persuasive brief. And so the predictive brief might be the end of it. We might go to the client if the law is just really not on our side. There's nothing we can really argue. We might not take that case. We might not file it. We might tell the client, hey, look, here's a bill for our time, but we can't do anything about this. If we decide to take that case, we're going to have to do some more research, because we're going to have to take that case into step 2, which is the persuasive brief. Now, the persuasive brief is written by an attorney to a court, trying to persuade them to do something. That is what you will do at the end of spring semester. Now, sometimes those persuasive briefs are argued in front of court. So let's take same case, mask mandate. And I've written the predictive brief, and I don't think the law is on our side, but I've listed all my authorities, and so I've given all of my case law and statutes and what have you in the predictive brief. And my attorney, my senior attorney says, you know what, we're going to take the case anyway. I want you to focus on these cases. I want you to find me a little bit more research, write another interoffice memo, and we're going to file that case, and we're going to file that against the school system. So it's going to be client, mother of client, we'll talk about standing later, files against the school district. Depending on who made the rule, sometimes health departments make that rule, but let's assume in this case the school district did. So it's our client against the school district. What's the first thing the school district does? Well, if the school district has the same, found the same cases that I, junior associate, did, they're going to know that the law is on their side. So they don't want to go to trial. They believe that the law is so firmly on their side that we don't have to go to trial. You'll learn about what motions do that in civil procedure. But we might file a motion to dismiss, or I'm sorry, they might file a motion to dismiss, or they might file a motion that essentially says the law is all on our side. Even if your facts are true, you still can't prevail. So summary judgment is often what we call that. They win. They write their persuasive brief to the judge. Remember, this is pre-trial, so we haven't seen a jury yet, and we may not. I file my claim, no masks, against the school district. The school district files a summary judgment motion. Summary judgment is trying to kick the case out of court before it even sees trial. So it's a we're not going to try this case motion. They write their persuasive brief in support of their motion for summary judgment, and then I write mine. And I have to be persuasive, and I know because I've found their cases, I have to try to find something to argue on behalf of my client. I have to try to persuade the judge. Now, that's always a little bit harder when the vast array of precedent is not on your side. But that's the persuasive brief that tries to get a court to do something. So the predictive brief predicts an answer. The persuasive brief tries to get the court to do something. Those are the two main components of this course. Along the process of writing those two documents, you're going to start with some smaller documents. You're going to start with that case brief. We'll call it an IRAC brief, and I'll do a little tutorial on that in a second. We're going to do some very kind of shorter predictive briefs. Maybe we're just going to brief one issue or one part of a problem before you finish the first semester, and then the second will be on to the persuasive brief and then the oral argument. So the way that works is I file my case, they file an answer and a motion for summary judgment. The court sets it for argument. I write my persuasive brief in support, or again, they write theirs in support of summary judgment. I write mine in support of my case going forward, so against summary judgment. And we argue those. Not every judge takes argument on every motion, but that's a typical one that would be. So we've got our briefs in front of us. the persuasive briefs. We've got all of our case law, all of our IRAC briefs with us, and we sit up in front of a court, a trial court, and argue, very much like you would in an appellate court. So at the end of the argument, the court usually adjourns and issues a written response or a written opinion in 30 days or so. And that's how it happens. So those 2 documents. We'll write the mini versions of those. You'll also have some research problems to do. Now, research is like a spider web, and you're trying to get from the outside to the inside. And you can go a million different ways around that spider web. You can kind of find a little piece of it and go all the way to the center, or you can, come all the way around here. If you get lost, you might end up in the place that you're at. But there's many different ways to find the answer to a legal question. And if you ask 5 different attorneys, they'll tell you 5 different ways to do it. But we will talk about the things that you will research, the types of law that you're going to research, and the different kinds of tools at your disposal. Being a lawyer is not about all the information that you can put into your brain. It's about how you use the tools that law school gives you to find answers to legal questions. So that's our roadmap for the semester. Those 2 main pieces of writing, little ones that are going to get us there, and then some research exercises along the way. I'm really excited to be here with you. I love teaching. I love teaching law school, and we are going to have a great semester.